8 minutes past 7. Welcome back to Sabahul Muslim on Radio Islam International. So the big news story over the weekend, I think it was the Sunday Times report that has brought to the fore the theory that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is willing to throw her hat into the ring and challenge President Ramaphosa at the upcoming conference of the ANC in December, the elective conference. Many were taken aback, been taken by surprise. One would have thought that she burnt her fingers. She lost by a very small margin, but she lost nonetheless. She's not getting any younger. I'm not sure exactly what her age is, but I would assume definitely around mid-70s or so. And that she may have thought that she's too associated with her former husband, Jacob Zuma, and his camp. And therefore, it would be difficult for her. If she lost by that slim margin, when Ramaphosa was not the incumbent, then what would her chances be now that he is the incumbent? However, there may be things that we don't know about the inner workings of the ANC. Not everyone challenges because they have a very strong chance. People have their own reasons. Sometimes they may believe they have a strong chance, even though others may believe otherwise. The speculation is that she will try and distance herself from her former husband, Jacob Zuma, and try and run her own campaign, unlike the other time when they were pretty much running a campaign for her. And there are those who say, well, Ramaphosa is still the lead horse. He's still the favorite. Until before Pala Pala, people thought that no one would even dare to oppose him. He would be nominated unopposed. And what would happen would be that it will be about the remaining five within the top six. Now it seems like he's under a lot of pressure. And the more he asks for the postponement or the extension of deadlines and that kind of thing to the various entities to whom he needs to account, it creates more suspicions. If he comes with some solid answers before the conference, it may sway things heavily into his favor. If he can't, and if there are more revelations prior to the conference, it may make it a bit touch and go. But all of that has got to do with the ANC. I know there are many people who thought, oh no, if it's going to be NDZ, it means the so-called RET faction, the opposing faction within the ANC, whatever you want to call them now, they're going to prevail, and that brings with it a whole host of other challenges. That's what people perceive. Whether it's true or not is a different matter. It brings with it a whole host of other challenges pertaining to corruption, etc., to the fore. Now, I've been hearing this theory amongst people, right? Amongst business people, amongst intellectuals, that this is showing up all the flaws of democracy. It's not only unique to South Africa. You see the same thing in America, where the one who's able to raise the most funds, who's got the biggest backers, they're the ones who prevail. But then they're beholden to their backers. So everyone thinks that, oh, I had a vote. I voted. Sure, you voted someone into office. But how did you get to know of that person? How were you impressed by that person? It was based on the amount of money that person was able to secure. And that person then has to do the bidding of the people who put him there, because now he's already worried about a second term. After that, he's worried about staying out of jail. He's worried about his legacy not being tarnished and his policies not being reversed, etc., etc., etc. So that is something that people bring to the fore all the time. That democracy creates this impression, and I'm not saying it's totally flawed, and that people don't have a say. People do have a say. At times, liberation icons were voted out of office eventually, but there are those who claim that in terms of sorting out certain deep-rooted issues, you need a benevolent dictator who doesn't have to worry about whose votes he's going to get and who he has to put in his cabinet to be able to secure, the support of different factions within his party, etc. An outright dictator, it comes with a whole host of other problems. Even a benevolent dictator, there's no foolproof system, right? But there are those who say, and I've heard this from like I said, intellectuals, business people, not just common folk, for the want of a better description. I don't say the word common folk or use the word common folk in any derogatory sense, who say, no, you need a benevolent dictator, someone who doesn't have to worry about all of these limitations and restrictions. Who's going to vote for me? Who's going to pass a motion of no confidence against me? Who's going to use the media against me? Just go ahead and get the job done. But in the interest of the country. The brutal dictator does it in his own interest. A benevolent dictator is one who doesn't allow too much dissenting view, but has the interest of the country at heart, and doesn't worry too much about the red tape and processes and procedures. It's a very fine line. I mean, you're skating on thin ice, as they would say. But what are your thoughts in that regard? I mean, is that something that you feel that needs to come to the fore? It's interesting because on the other hand, you've got this whole debate about the monarchy and whether certain countries will break away from the Commonwealth. It's a different thing. I don't think you can in any way compare the monarchy to the concept of a benevolent dictator because they don't really have political power. It's the prime minister there who makes the decisions. They have a different kind of authority, a different kind of power. Some may look at certain countries and say, look at those dictators there, where there's no elections as such. It's a kind of kingdom. It passes on from the incumbent to whoever the incumbent chooses as a successor. And look at how brutal it is in human rights and quashing of dissenting voices. That's brutal dictators. Is there an example of a benevolent dictator, someone who's made things work in his country? I don't know. Some may look towards the UAE purely from a worldly perspective, not a spiritual perspective, and say, well, whilst they may not be considered dictators according to some standards, it's a family-run country, right? There's no elections there. The incumbent decides which of his sons will succeed him, or his brothers, or whoever within the family structure. And some would say, you see, that's why the UAE has been able to prosper in recent decades, because they go ahead and get the job done. They don't have to worry about winning an election and losing an election and this kind of thing. It doesn't mean that they don't have their own global restrictions and limitations. If you look at how they had to cozy up to Israel, etc. But that's the thing. So what are your thoughts in that regard? You can WhatsApp us on 072 786 1548 or email smr@radioislam.co.za. Your thoughts on the concept of a benevolent dictator required to turn around the fortunes of South Africa. Coming up in a bit, our hadith for the morning. Then we continue with the Palestine report. Maulana Ibrahim Musa will join us on the line. After 7:30, words with Maulana Wajah, tafsir of Surah Banu Israel. Today we commence the discussion about Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala instructing us to be kind to our parents. At 7:45, Ian Rintol, a political activist and spokesperson for the Refugee Action Coalition in Australia, will talk to us about refugees rallying for permanent visas in Australia. After 8, we've got two political analysts talking to us about the impact of the ANC's elective conference on the rest of South Africa. We will, towards the end of the program, speak about domestic workers, Muslim domestic workers in India, having to change their names out of fear. And our theme discussion for this week is on the purpose of our creation and why we worship Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So that's what you can look forward to between now and 9 o'clock on Sabahul Muslim. I put that question out to you. Let me know your thoughts in that regard as well. It's just gone now, 16 minutes past 7.
Hadith discussions on Sabahul Muslim with Maulana Sulaimaan Ravat.
عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت: سمع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صوت خصوم بالباب عالية أصواتهما، وإذا أحدهما يستوضع الآخر ويسترفقه في شيء وهو يقول والله لا أفعل، فخرج عليهما رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: أين المتألي على الله لا يفعل المعروف؟ فقال: أنا يا رسول الله، فله أي ذلك أحب. متفق عليه. Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam once heard the sounds of an argument outside the door, with both the disputants having raised their voices. One of them was asking the other to reduce the debt and to be lenient towards him, while the other was saying, by Allah, I will not do so. The Messenger of Allah went to them and said, who is the person who is taking an oath in the name of Allah that he will not do good? The man said, it is me, O Messenger of Allah, and now I agree to whatever my debtor desires. So the one was owing the other money, and they were arguing. So the one owing was saying, I'm struggling. Can't you reduce the debt a little bit? Give me a bit of a discount. And the other one was saying no. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came out and said, who's saying no to doing good? In other words, to reduce the debt of a person who's genuinely struggling, not one who's taking advantage of you. That's an action of goodness. That's something for which you will get reward. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam basically encouraged him by asking him that question. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, it was me, but now on your encouragement, whatever he wants to pay, he can pay. And whatever he wants to consider a discount, he can consider a discount. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, وَإِن كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ, if the debtor is in difficulty, فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ, grant him time until it is easy for him to repay. وَأَن تَصَدَّقُوا, but if you forgo it by means of charity, you wipe the debt off totally, خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, it is best for you if only you knew. If the debtor is genuinely struggling, And if the creditor has the ability to forgo a portion of the debt or the entire debt, you should do that. It's a great form of charity. People have earned their entrance into Jannah as a result of this. If you look at the other hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that doesn't mean that when you take money, you must take money with that intention. Now, he'll borrow me 100 grand. I'll tell him in the end I can only pay 50 because he can afford to waive the other 50. He may say no because there may be 10 people like you doing the same thing to him. So that would not be correct. But where a person is genuinely had a good intention of wanting to repay, and then he felt on difficult times and he's struggling, and the creditor can manage to waive, then he should waive to the best of his ability and secure himself the reward. After the break, the Palestine report.
This is Sabahul Muslim.